So we're going to start with a brief overview of the engineering section of IMPS. We won't touch on it too much, but to show you here that it opens with a list of parts. It's a full parts database of all of the designs we have created in our company. If we go into a specific part, for example, this stage 1 core, we can see lots of information around design, purchasing, stock management, and these features. Just now, I'm going to highlight the part BOM information shown down here. This required documentation section, we can select the various different documentation requirements for this specific part. These are requirements that we need our suppliers or our production staff to fulfill during the manufacture and assembly of the parts, and these are documents that we want to capture through that process so that we can build the manufacturing record book at the end alongside shipping the final product to the customer. So here you can see that I've selected a certificate of conformity to be put together for this assembly. And if we were to jump into the hydrogen tank that's part of this sub-assembly, we can see that that needs a pressure test certificate as well. So the engineering team will design the parts, they'll create the BOMs, which will create our full engineering BOM structure. The project management team will probably start out by creating a project. So come here to create a new project. So now I've got a brand new project for which I'm going to make a customer sale, and then I'm going to create the build standard or work breakdown structure for this project. So a project's life will often begin as you're making a quotation. So in IMPS, we create our quotations through the sales order interface, so we can turn them from quotes into sales orders and into our project build standard, nice and simple. So here I will just create a new sales order for our new project. Pocket number 2. And from that, we can fill in lots of details about who the customer is. So here we will say the customer is Auto Mechanics. And we will add a part to that, and we're going to add in our full orbital rocket here. So we'll make one of those. We're going to sell it for £1 million, and we'll put it on the on our sales order there. Let's push this out a bit. Let's say we're going to have that. It's going to take a bit more than 2 weeks. Let's say it's going to take us 4 weeks. So there's more to quotes and sale orders for now. I'll just highlight that we can create a sales order. We can download a quotation to send to our customer, an order acceptance once we've finalized that. And we can go through some workflow steps, of which what I'm going to do here is say that the customer has accepted that workflow. So that's the management side, and that helps us set up our project. So now if we go and look into the build standard of this project, we can click here on build standard. We will see that we're currently looking at a previous project, number 1. So what I'm going to do is just come to my profile and switch myself into this project through over here. And that'll make all the information I'm seeing in the system relevant to the project I'm currently working on. So you can make sure that things just are easily displayed relative to a particular project you're working on at that moment in time. Jumping back to build standard, we will now see that under this project, we've got a sales order 1, which requires this orbital rocket to be built. What we're going to do is we are going to expand that to a full build. So we can click here to create the build standard behind that. This is going to look into the engineering data and create a full tree of requirements. So building one, we're going to add items from the first level of the bond, and then we're going to create the tree of children beneath. Here we can see that there are already some assemblies that we have in stock, so we could ask the system to reuse those rather than building new versions. I'm going to choose do not reuse here because we are going to have a fully separate build for us. So now we can see that top level build for the rocket. So we're building one rocket. We can see we need a stage 1 core, stage 2 core, an orbital capsule, and we need 4 boosters. And this is a view of that particular activity level. So this would be taking those as inputs and building the rocket as an output. And if we go back to that build standard view, we can see that as a tree. So we can see that the sale of a rocket requires build one of those, requires us to build these 4 items. So the project management tool is about setting up this structure. And we can do more than just have build tasks. We can have other activities in this list as well. We'll cover that in other videos. So key points as a project manager are that my job is to look at this list of things that we need to build and decide which ones are ready to be purchased. So here I'm going to select the stage 2 core and a few items from the emergency tool chest. You'll notice that the booster, because it's already been selected as well. So I can choose approve. The date, I can put a customized date in here. Normally it will be dependent on when the start date of their activity is, but we can customize that if we need to. So you can see that these have now gone green, which meaning that I've approved, as a project manager, I've approved them for the purchasing team to look at. So we will go to a purchasing screen now and just show that information. So if I go item search as one of the key project screens, and into the system where we can track purchasing and stock either across the whole company or for an individual project by project. This demonstration is set up for project by project. So I'm going to choose from this drop down my new project. That is going to show me a list of all the things that I need to buy just on my project and only things that have been approved by the project manager. So we can see here we've got the stage 1 core, we've got some outer panels for that, adaptering parts that make up that core. We've got the boosters that we need to buy for that project, and we've got some of the assemblies we need to build. So these are so from this list we can create them. We'll come back to that in a second. What I want to briefly show you is what happens when the engineering team update a part. So what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that at this stage in the process, the engineering team hadn't added the new control system to the build, but they've been away, they've done the design, and so they've come up with this new part, which is a control system. So we'll just quickly create one of those here. We'll keep it a drawn revision because we've designed it. We'll ask for a CFC. And then if I go back to my list of parts, I'm just going to go down to my orbital rocket. I'm going to add in that new control system. And actually, because it's a system, I'm going to say we need 3 of those. So that engineering have made some changes. As a project manager, I can come back to my build standard and I can see that if I expand the sales order, I can see that the rocket, and I can see there are some updates available to that. I can see that there's been engineering changes. So I can select that. I can see my orbital up here, and I can just simply click on this up arrow button, and that's going to pull all those changes into this rocket. So we can see here now that it's added this control system into my project. And because I'm tasked with building the rocket, that's all being passed on to the purchasing team as well. And we can control how that flow works. Here it's been done automatically. So if I now go back to my item search page, and again, let's just narrow this down to our second rocket launch, we can see that the control system now appears on our list of things to buy. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll select that control system. We'll do add to purchase order. And this is a simple way to get our purchase order set up. Here, I'm going to select CO2 Direct. I could have added a preferred supplier back under the part engineering information, which would have helped make this choice more automatic. But currently, I'm just doing that manually. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And you'll see it's now been removed from this list. So we could keep going through the list and create more options. I'm actually, for some of these things that we're not buying, but we're going to assemble in-house, we have this option here to create a work order, which is an internal job for our production team. So for these assemblies, I'm just going to go ahead and create work order to clear those off this list as well. If we jump to purchase orders, we can see here is that purchase order I've just created. And we can see that it's pulled through. We haven't bought it before, so there's no existing pricing information. But we can see that because I was ordered it from project 3, that this purchase order is also linked to project 3, and that will immediately help capture the costs as being part of that project. If I go to edit this, I can give this a price. Let's give it a big price. And I can set delivery dates, payment terms, delivery terms, and other information. Once I'm happy with all the details of my purchase order, I can go back to the front page and I can use the output tool to generate me the PDF that I'm going to send to my customer, my supplier. And you can see this is fully customizable in the background. We can have front pages, detailed terms and conditions. All the information you need can be put onto this purchase order document. We can also see that on this line for my specific order, it's pulled through the documentation requirements I selected in the part design. This makes sure that suppliers know what those documentation requirements are, and so that they make sure that the tests are carried out during production and that the documentation is supplied when it gets delivered. Once we've sent that out to our supplier, we can choose workflow ordered. And note there are some earlier steps. So if we need authorization for this purchase order before it can be placed, we can go through an awaiting authorization and ready to send stages before we get to ordered. But for now, we'll just jump straight to that ordered step. And what that means is that the system knows that that is now being placed, and we're going to track that delivery date for that purchase. So now that purchase order has been set to ordered, we will move on to the deliveries and stock management layers. So as a stores person, they'll be working from the deliveries page. And this shows all of the outstanding deliveries due across all projects into this particular warehouse. At the bottom here, we can see the control systems that the order we've just placed. So I will enter the quantity 3 into the to be delivered and mark those as going into stock. Here we get a warning showing that because we've marked these items as requiring a certificate of conformity and those haven't been saved yet, the source person can see that information and check through the documentation they've been provided to see whether they've come with the parts. We'll click continue and come back to that in a minute. I can then enter a particular location for these parts where they've gone in stores. Moving to the stock levels page, we are able to see all of the items we have in stock across all projects for a particular location, or we can look at just what's in stock assigned to a particular project. Here we can see the 3 control systems we have just delivered. Now, for parts that require specific serial numbers, either assigned internally or from the supplier, we can add those here. So this is the detail showing the demand and the supply of this part across all projects, or again, a particular project. So we can see that we have 3 in stock and we're going to need 3 to fulfill this work order. So looking at the 3 in stock here, we can drill down into the detail. From that detail, we can use this command to add serial numbers. So we'll split them out into individual one-off items, and we'll add our serial numbers into the box here. And now we have our 3 separate parts, each with a different serial number. I choose the first one. So what we'll do now is we're seeing information about that singular item. Now we'll imagine that we have had that CFC delivered, and it applies to all items on that purchase order line. So jumping back to that purchase order, I'm going to use the attachments option, which is a powerful tool. It can apply to, we can attach documents to all objects in the system. We can attach them to parts if they're a test plan or data sheet. We can attach them to purchase orders and lots of other places in the system as well. Here we can see that each of these serial number items are missing that certificate of conformity. So we can quickly come in here to add a document. I will grab one I made earlier. And we will just make sure we set the correct category for that. And we'll choose create. That now becomes available in the system, and we can select, if we select this line and attach that document, that is going to add it into the line, and we can also make it aware that it applies to all 3 of these serial numbers as well. So now we've done that, we've got some documentation into the system. What we'll do now is we'll look at the report for the documentation and understand where our project's at. So I can go here under project management to the documentation report, and that's going to give me an overall view of where all the documentation is for this rocket build. So again, if I just expand this out, we can see that all the parts in yellow have some missing documentation to them. So we can see here that these engines need a certificate of conformity, and they haven't had that delivered yet. We can see down here that the control system so now we've assigned that documentation, we're going to book these parts out onto a work order. So coming down to work order search, we can find our work order for project 3 to make our orbital capsule. So now I've attached that documentation, we can book out these parts to a work order for production. So coming down to stock levels again, we can find those parts in stock, and click on them, and we can choose book out. We'll get a list of places where these need to be used. So we can see that we need them on this job 11. So we tick the box for that and choose book out. And that's now taken out of stock, put them on that job. Now, so that would apply to all of the other parts. As they come in delivered, they go into stock, they get booked out to their respective jobs. Now we'll jump to the documentation report, which is going to give us feedback on all of the parts in our system and whether we've received the documentation that we need. So this is a view of the whole project. I'm going to expand the view so we can see all the parts. And items that are marked in yellow have some level of documentation missing. So we can see here that these engines require a certificate of conformity, and they don't yet have that. They do have a part drawing, but no documentation for these specific deliveries. At the bottom, we can see our control systems, and it's highlighting that we have seal number 1, but we also have seal number 2 and 3 assigned to this. And we can see that that needs a certificate of conformity, and that has already been attached. So we expand out here, and because there are multiple seal numbers, each of the certificates of conformity for those seal numbers are appearing in this list. So now we have assigned the documentation and booked out the items to a work order. We'll have a look at the documentation report, and this will give us an overall view of the project on where the documentation requirements are. There are various reports for this project, so you can look at reports for purchasing, an overall project report. This page breaks down the specific documentation requirements and also allows us to produce the MRB at the end of the project. So if we expand this page, we can see that we have the So now we'll move on to look at the documentation report. This is one of a number of reports in the system that can be generated to look at a whole project and give at-a-glance information about the progress. We can look into specific purchasing information, cost information, production and assembly information, and other reports. On this documentation report, it's going to highlight to us any items where documentation that is required has not been received. So, for example, these engines, they require a certificate of conformity, and these haven't yet arrived. If we come down to the bottom, we can see the control systems that we have purchased and booked out and see that they do need a certificate of conformity. And if we expand into the detail, we can see that that's been attached. Once we've collected all the documentation requirements for this project, we can use this download option to download a single large zip file containing all those individual documents and a table of contents that provides links to all of individual items. Again, this can be customized with formatting and branding to be a professional document that is ready to deliver to the customer. The final area to show in this video is timesheets and costing. So any user in the system is able to fill out their timesheets. It's under their individual section. So I'm going to go to my initials in the top right and choose timesheets from the list. And this is a system that makes it very quick and easy to input new times against new tasks and tasks that you've been undertaking in the previous days. So currently my timesheet's empty. I'm going to add in a new task. So I've been working on this project and I've been doing the project setup. So let's pretend I did this last week and I can add in some time into the days on that project. And then let's say today what I've actually been working on is I can drill down and say I was working on the assembly of the stage 1 core. And that was what I was doing this morning, so I can add 3 hours in there. And this provides a convenient list of all recent tasks that a user has been working on, and so they can easily update for last week or the current day, and provides a quick and easy interface for gathering this information. The hours are allocated to specific activities underneath the project so that we can capture fine-grained detail about where time has been spent. alongside bought out costs, users can have an hourly rate attached to their individual account. And so that can be pulled in to an overall cost report for a project. We can see here under project management, we have a cost reporting tool. Now, this is a very simple project at this point, but it allows us to not only see costs that have been accrued due to parts being delivered, but it also allows us to forecast future costs through purchase orders that have been placed or planned but haven't yet arrived. By also taking into account payment terms, this can provide us a cash forecast of when we're going to have to pay for items after they've been delivered. It provides various tools to drill down into the costs. We can go through individual purchase orders. We can drill down into specific tasks within the project. We can look at costs to specific suppliers. We can look at cost again to specific activities. And we can also drill down into the project hours specifically. Here, there's only a single week with hours in it. So this page provides us good detail on how our project is progressing, and both in the past and projected forward into the future. That's all for this video. There are some extra topics that we haven't covered here. Check back for our other videos for more detail on those in future.